Pentel versus Caran d'Ache oil pastels. Which works better? This is what we're going to find out in today's video. I have made very interesting discoveries while painting this landscape using both brands, so make sure to watch the entire video as first we're going to look at the specificities of each oil pastel brand, and then we'll see how they perform and compare on paper. Hi, I'm Françoise, and on this channel you will find watercolor, oil pastel, gouache tutorials, and more. For my art, I use Art Philosophy oil pastels, but because I'm a brand ambassador of theirs, I didn't want this video to seem biased in any way. This is why I picked Pentel and Caran d'Ache for today's study, not to mention there are complete opposites on the price range spectrum for oil pastels, which is going to make this comparison even more interesting. Both brands can be easily found online. Pentel is easy to find offline, even in stores like Walmart or Target, while a brand like Caran d'Ache belongs to art stores. If you're on a tight budget but you're curious, you can try the Caran d'Ache oil pastels by purchasing them individually on a website like Amazon, and Pentel oil pastels are mostly sold as a set, but I've seen them sold individually on Pentel's main website too. Looking at the quality of the box alone, you can tell both brands position themselves very differently. On the Caran d'Ache box, it is made very clear that these are artist-grade oil pastels, which implies their quality is overall superior. With Pentel, it is less obvious. Online, Pentel says that their art supplies are made for artists, students, and art enthusiasts, which sets their target as a much wider one than that of Caran d'Ache. When you look closely though, both brands say that the oil pastels are light fast, meaning colors stay vibrant over time, they don't fade easily, and that is a pretty good thing to consider and look for in a brand for someone wanting to sell their art, for instance. About the way they're made, the first thing I noticed about both brands is how the oil pastels look similar in terms of how thick they are. For colors, I cannot compare the 50 and 48 oil pastel sets as the one I own for Pentel is quite small, but overall the shades in a set will vary slightly, and given my experience, it's the case for all mediums and brands. The tag is said to come off easily with Caran d'Ache, which is the case. I can confirm it for trying it. While Pentel, once the tip of my oil pastel was all used up here, I had to insist and use my nails to get the tag off. So for me, already with small details like these, I can see how Caran d'Ache is thought out to be very agreeable to use. From reading the boxes, I gathered more information that is very useful as it will directly impact your painting experience. The opacity, for instance. Caran d'Ache makes it clear right on the box that its pastels are opaque and creamy. Let's see how this is. I can also see on the boxes that both can be mixed to white spirits, so I decided to try it and see what this looks like. As to mixing them with water, Pentel says you can brush water over the oil pastels to better the way the colors look, and Caran d'Ache oil pastels, on the other hand, are waterproof, so these are properties you'll want to consider as well. Overall, I was surprised not to find anything specific about the exact composition for these oil pastels on the boxes or the websites, so we'll have to draw our own conclusions with the second part of this video where I'm going to expand on how they perform with a particular painting I created twice using Pentel first and then Caran d'Ache. Something even I didn't expect for the end, so let's see how this unfolds. With Pentel, I had enough blue shades to find something that works, as my reference photo showed several blue tones from very light to very dark. Note that even if you don't have enough shades, you can always mix colors. I'll link a Skillshare class up here and in the description that I made teaching just that, and in particular how to layer oil pastels. It will be very useful as a complement to this video. With Caran d'Ache, I thought the choice was easier as naturally I had a lot more shades to choose from. I started applying the Pentel white oil pastel. I immediately started comparing mentally with the ones I always use, the Art Philosophy oil pastels, and right away I felt these are harder to apply. I had to apply more strength, they didn't feel creamy. They reminded me more of crayons. I also noticed the white looks pretty translucent. I kept on applying the colors with my blues, which look more opaque but still as dry. Now let's see how this laying the colors down part went with Caran d'Ache. The first thing that struck me is a similar experience I have with my usual oil pastels I mentioned previously when I started applying the pigment. Caran d'Ache oil pastels felt way creamier, easier to apply. Afterwards, I even regretted going so hard on them. I applied too much. You can even see how much there is on paper right here, and it wasn't even blended. I did the same as with the Pentels without as much strength, and you can clearly see how much more oily these must be from the looks of it. And the downside of it is they go fast because they're so easy to apply. But I think this is my mistake of going too crazy with them. It would be much better with another painting, and now I know how they feel and act. If you use Caran d'Ache for the first time, I can suggest to start gently and blend to first see how much you really need. You can still add more later. Let's blend the Pentel oil pastels. I didn't like that it felt like the oil pastels didn't stick much, especially the white one. The blues were fine, but with white it was never opaque enough. It felt really frustrating. I also struggled getting transitions that look smooth and flawless. I decided to add a tad of baby oil to ease the blending, and it did help a lot, even though it didn't equal the experience I am used to with art philosophy. I wanted to add dark ripples, and normally when I work with this paper and my other oil pastels, it's just fine to blend them, but here you can see how the lines remains very visible. It didn't even look like I tried blending them. This is a reminder, especially for my students on Skillshare, that the paper you use as well as the oil pastels themselves can affect the painting experience. So if you aren't getting the same exact look, it is not you. And don't despair if this is your case, especially if you can't afford top-notch oil pastels for now, as I have something interesting to show you once we finish these two paintings. Now let's blend the Caran d'Ache oil pastels. The experience was nice as they're easy to blend with the paper towel technique, but I was not happy at the thought of wasting pigment because I put so much down on paper in the first place. I could feel it as I was blending that there was a thick coat underneath. What I find is obvious is the coverage is much better, even though I did have to add more white here also. The blending was also very fast, probably because I didn't struggle at all. The transitions were better. I added those same lines for dark ripples, and you can see it does look better here once blended. Better, or at least easier to control to make it look a certain way. Detouring the leaves with my blending stump was very easy because I had enough pigment down to drag onto those bare areas around the leaves. I kept working on both paintings with the leaves, just like I did with the backgrounds, except I had to be more precise applying the pastels. I added a shade of brown, white, and black, and then blended those colors. I noticed a difference when I started adding highlights with a gel pen. With Pentel, because they're not very oily and the layers were thinner than the Caran d'Ache version, it was easy. With Caran d'Ache, I kept having to clean the nib as it easily got covered in oil pastels, which again shows how oily the Caran d'Ache oil pastels are and how little pigment you actually need to paint, since here I had a thick coat. Now the thing I absolutely want you to see is the side-by-side result. Yes, the coverage and gradients look better with Caran d'Ache. They're easier to get. But let me know in the comments what you think about the Pentel version of this, as I actually prefer that one. The brown looks more vibrant there, and overall it looks more pleasant to me looking at it. It would have been great if the ripples blended better, but that's it. My point, and it was not what I was thinking I would be saying until I finished both paintings, is that you can use cheaper supplies that may be a bit more tough getting used to, maybe, but still you can make it work. This is proof you can paint very decent things whether you use cheap art supplies or the best brand there is. I'd seen before some videos demonstrating the same, that it is not the supplies you use that count the most. They help, that's it, and now I can say it is true. What matters is to practice and try techniques that work for you. I was using techniques I know work for this kind of painting, and because I had that down already, I managed something even with the harder to use oil pastels. Of course, I still encourage you to try the other brands whenever it's possible to do your own work of seeing what you enjoy best for your painting style. And if you can't do this now, you're just fine and you can experiment for as much as you want with what you have. To take your practice a bit further, I'll link my last Skillshare oil pastel class trailer here. It will be very useful as a complement to this video, and please like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be updated on my future videos, and for now, thank you for watching and see you soon.